Hello, my name is Natalie. I am a student of English, and I want to tell you how I memorize new words. Learning new words was not easy for me. I used to forget words as soon as I learned them. It felt like they disappeared from my mind. But then, I discovered a new way to remember them, and everything changed. 1. Natalie's first step, connecting words to pictures. Natalie sat at her desk, staring at the list of English words in her notebook. She had written them down neatly, each one with its meaning beside it. But there was a problem. Whenever she tried to recall them later, they just vanished from her mind. It was frustrating. She had spent so much time writing them, reading them, and even repeating them aloud, but it was as if her brain refused to hold on to them. She sighed and closed her notebook, feeling defeated. "Why is this so hard?" she muttered to herself. The next day, in her English class, her teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed her frustration. "Natalie, what's wrong?" she asked kindly. Natalie hesitated for a moment before answering. "I try to learn new words, but I keep forgetting them," she admitted. "No matter how many times I write them, they don't stay in my head." Mrs. Thompson smiled knowingly and pulled out a colorful picture book from her desk. She flipped through the pages and pointed to an image of a bright red apple. "What's this?" she asked. Natalie frowned, a little confused. "It's an apple," she answered. "Exactly," Mrs. Thompson said. "And how do you know that?" Natalie thought for a moment. "I've seen apples since I was a kid. I know what they look like, so I don't forget the word." Mrs. Thompson nodded. "That's the secret, Natalie. Words stay in your mind when you connect them to something real, something you can see, touch, or feel." She handed the book to Natalie. "Try this. Instead of memorizing words by writing them down over and over, connect each word to a picture in your mind." That evening, Natalie decided to give it a try. She picked a new word from her list. Butterfly. Instead of just writing it again, she closed her eyes and imagined a butterfly in her garden. She pictured its bright orange wings, the way it fluttered from flower to flower. She even imagined herself reaching out and feeling its soft wings. She said the word aloud. Butterfly. The next morning, she was surprised to realize she still remembered it. The image of the butterfly was so clear in her mind that the word came naturally. Encouraged by her success, she tried another word. Umbrella. She imagined herself holding an umbrella on a rainy day, feeling the raindrops bounce off its surface. She smiled as she said the word out loud. Day by day, her notebook started to change. Instead of long lists of words and meanings, it was now filled with little drawings and colorful doodles. Next to the word sun, she had drawn a big yellow circle. Next to ocean, she had painted blue waves. She was not a great artist, but that didn't matter. The pictures made the words come alive. One afternoon, Natalie's best friend, Mia, visited her house. She noticed Natalie's notebook full of drawings and laughed. "What is this?" Mia asked, flipping through the pages. "Are you learning English or making a comic book?" Natalie grinned. "I'm trying a new way to memorize words. Instead of just reading them, I connect them to pictures. And it works." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Really? Okay, test me." Natalie showed her a drawing of a mountain. "What word do you think this is?" Mia hesitated for a second, then guessed. "Mountain?" "Yes," Natalie said excitedly. "See? It's easier when you have a picture in your head." Mia was impressed. "Okay, I want to try too. Let's make this a game." For the next hour, the girls took turns drawing simple pictures and guessing the words. It was fun, and without even realizing it, they learned new words along the way. Natalie felt more confident than ever. A week later in class, Mrs. Thompson gave them a vocabulary quiz. Natalie felt a little nervous at first, but as soon as she looked at the words, the pictures came into her mind. Cloud, she thought, remembering the fluffy white shapes she had drawn in her notebook. Bridge, she recalled, picturing the wooden bridge she had sketched. She finished the quiz quickly, and when the results came back, she had done better than ever before. Mrs. Thompson smiled as she handed Natalie her paper. "Great job," she said. "Looks like you found a method that works for you." Natalie beamed. She had finally cracked the code to remembering words by making them real through pictures. But as she continued learning, she realized something. Pictures were helpful, but they were not enough. She needed to take things one step further. She needed to bring the words into her daily life. Making words a part of daily life, Natalie was thrilled by her progress. Connecting words to pictures had made memorizing new vocabulary easier, and for the first time she felt confident in her ability to learn English. But soon she noticed a small problem. While she could remember the words when she saw the pictures, she still hesitated when trying to use them in conversation. The words were in her mind, but they didn't come out naturally when she spoke. She realized that just knowing the words wasn't enough. She needed to make them a real part of her daily life. One evening, as she sat at the dinner table with her family, she thought about how she could practice using new words. Her little brother Jake was playing with his toy cars, making loud engine sounds. Their mom was serving spaghetti, and their dad was reading a book. Natalie suddenly had an idea. "What's for dinner, Mom?" she asked, deciding to use one of her new words. "Spaghetti," her mom replied. "It looks delicious," Natalie said, pausing for a second before adding, "It smells appetizing." Her mom raised an eyebrow. "Appetizing? That's a new word for you." Natalie grinned. "I learned it yesterday. It means something that smells or looks really good to eat." Her mom smiled. "Well, I'm glad you think my cooking is appetizing." Natalie felt a small sense of victory. She had just used a new word in real conversation, and it felt natural. She decided to keep doing this, finding ways to use new words in everyday situations. The next day at school, she looked around for more opportunities. During lunch, her friend Mia was struggling to open her juice bottle. Natalie saw her twist the cap again and again with no success. "It's really stubborn," Natalie said, using another new word. Mia laughed. "Stubborn? Like my juice bottle." "Has a personality?" Natalie nodded. "Kind of. Stubborn means something or someone that won't change easily. Like when you don't want to wake up early for school, I can say you're stubborn." Mia giggled. Okay, then this bottle is very stubborn." She finally managed to open it and took a sip. "I like this game. Teach me another word." That's when Natalie realized something exciting. Learning words didn't have to be boring or lonely. She could make it fun by involving other people. Every day, she tried to use at least 3 new words in different conversations. If she learned the word cozy, she would mention how cozy her blanket was on a cold night. If she learned gigantic, she would point out a gigantic tree in the park. Slowly, the words became a natural part of her speech, and she didn't have to struggle to remember them anymore. One evening, while walking home from school, Natalie decided to challenge herself even more. She started describing things around her using new words. "The sky is so vast today," she whispered to herself, remembering the word vast meant very big and wide. She saw an old house with broken windows and thought, "That house looks abandoned." Every step she took, she tried to use a different word. It became a fun little game, and before she knew it, she was home. One day, while doing her homework, she noticed that she had learned many new words, but she still sometimes forgot them after a few days. She needed a way to keep them fresh in her mind. That's when she thought of a new idea, labeling objects in her house. She grabbed some sticky notes and a pen, then walked around her room. She wrote mirror and stuck it on her mirror. She wrote lamp and placed it on her bedside lamp. Closet, pillow, notebook. Soon, her entire room was covered in labels. Every time she saw the words, she read them, reinforcing their meaning in her mind. When her brother, Jake, walked into her room, he looked around in surprise. "Why is your room covered in words?" he asked, picking up the sticky note from the chair. "I'm learning English," Natalie explained. "Seeing the words every day helps me remember them." Jake shrugged and pointed to his toy box. "Can you put one on this too?" Natalie laughed and wrote "toy box" on a sticky note before placing it on his box. "Now you're learning with me." Over the next few weeks, she expanded her word labeling game to the rest of the house. She labeled the fridge, the microwave, and even the bathroom mirror. Her family found it amusing, but they also started using the words, which made Natalie even more confident. Her little brother especially loved running around, reading the labels aloud like it was a treasure hunt. One evening, while sitting in the living room, her dad picked up a sticky note that said, "couch." He looked at Natalie and smiled. "No, when I was learning a new language, I did something similar, but I also used to talk to myself in that language." Natalie frowned. "Talk to yourself?" Her dad nodded. "Yes, I would describe what I was doing out loud. If I was making tea, I'd say, 'I am boiling water. I am pouring it into the cup.' It helped me think in that language instead of just memorizing words." Natalie thought about that idea. She was already labeling things around her. What if she took it a step further and started talking to herself in English? It felt a little strange, but she was willing to try. The next morning, she woke up and stretched. "I am waking up," she whispered to herself. As she brushed her teeth, she said, "I am brushing my teeth." At breakfast, she thought, "I am eating cereal. It is crunchy." It felt silly at first, but the more she did it, the more natural it became. She started talking to herself while doing homework, walking to school, and even while cleaning her room. It was like having a conversation with herself, and it made her feel more comfortable using English. The best part? She started, thinking in English without even trying. One afternoon, while shopping with her mom, she saw a beautiful scarf at a store. Without thinking, she said, "That scarf looks elegant." Her mom turned to her in surprise. "Elegant? That's a fancy word." Natalie smiled. "I learned it last week. It means stylish and classy." Her mom patted her shoulder. "You're getting really good at this." Natalie felt proud. English was no longer just something she studied. It had become part of her life. She used new words every day, talked to herself in English, and even helped her family learn new vocabulary. But she knew she wasn't done yet. She wanted to make learning even more exciting. If talking to herself was helpful, maybe playing word games could make it even better. 3. Learning with fun games and challenges Natalie's confidence in English was growing every day. She had started thinking in English, talking to herself while doing daily activities, and labeling objects in her home to reinforce new vocabulary. Words that once felt unfamiliar were now a natural part of her conversations. But even though she was making great progress, she wanted to find an even more enjoyable way to learn. One evening, while sitting at the kitchen table, Natalie noticed her little brother, Jake, playing a matching card game. He had a pile of colorful cards, each with a picture on one side and a word on the other. He flipped over 2 cards trying to find a match. "What are you playing?" Natalie asked, leaning over to watch. "It's a memory game," Jake said. "I have to find the matching pictures." Natalie watched as he carefully flipped over one card and then another, cheering when he found a pair. That's when an idea sparked in her mind. What if she made a memory game for learning English words? Excited, she grabbed some index cards and a marker. On one set of cards, she wrote words like ocean, bright, enormous, and whisper. On another set, she drew pictures to match those words. After she finished, she shuffled the cards and spread them out on the table. "Wanna play a new game?" she asked Jake. Jake looked at the cards and grinned. "Sure. How do we play?" Natalie explained the rules. "You have to match the word with the correct picture. If you get it right, you keep the pair. If not, you turn. Then back over and try again. Jake clapped his hands. Let's do it! As they played, Natalie realized that this simple game helped her remember words even faster. Every time she flipped a card, she said the word out loud, making the connection stronger in her mind. When Jake struggled with a word, she explained its meaning, which helped reinforce her own understanding. After a few rounds, Natalie thought about adding a challenge. Let's make it harder, she said. We have to use the word in a sentence before we can keep the pair. Jake groaned but agreed. Fine, but you go first. Natalie flipped over a card. It said, whisper. She thought for a moment, before saying, I whisper when I tell a secret. Jake flipped over a card with a picture of a big wave. Ocean, he read. He scratched his head before saying, The ocean is very big? Natalie smiled. Try using a stronger word like vast. Jake repeated, The ocean is vast. They continued playing until all the cards were matched. By the end, Natalie realized she had memorized every word effortlessly. It didn't feel like studying, it felt like playing. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about other games she could create to make learning fun. The next morning, she grabbed a small notebook and wrote down a list of possible games. Word puzzles, charades, rhyming games, she mumbled to herself, tapping her pen against the page. She wanted to make learning English as exciting as possible. At school, she shared her ideas with her friend Mia. Do you want to try a new word game? Natalie asked as they sat in the cafeteria. Mia took a bite of her sandwich and nodded. Sure. What's the game? Natalie grinned. It's called Describe It. I'll say a word, and you have to describe it without saying the actual word. Mia leaned forward. Okay, give me one. Natalie thought for a second. Mysterious. Mia tapped her chin. Something that makes you curious, like a secret. Yes, Natalie clapped. See? You just explained the meaning without using the word. They played the game for the rest of lunch, laughing, as they challenged each other with harder words. By the end, they had unknowingly learned 10 new vocabulary words without even realizing it. Over the next few days, Natalie experimented with different games. She played a rhyming challenge with Jake, where they took turns saying words that rhymed. She created crossword puzzles with her mom and tried acting out words in a game of charades with her dad. One evening, as she was playing a word association game with her family, her dad looked at her with a proud smile. Natalie, you've turned learning into something fun. That's the best way to remember anything. Natalie beamed. She no longer felt frustrated when learning new words. Instead, she looked forward to it. Learning English had become something she truly enjoyed. But she still had one more challenge ahead, practicing speaking with real people. Using words in real conversations, Natalie had come a long way in her English learning journey. She had started by connecting words to pictures, making new words a part of her daily life, and creating fun games to remember them. Every day she was learning new vocabulary, and she felt proud of how much she had improved. But there was still one thing that made her nervous: speaking in real conversations. Even though she knew many words, she found it hard to use them when talking to other people. Sometimes she hesitated because she wasn't sure if she was saying the words correctly. Other times, she felt shy and worried that people would laugh at her mistakes. One afternoon, Natalie was sitting at the kitchen table, playing her memory game with Jake. She had just matched the word excited with a picture of a girl jumping in the air when her mom walked in. You've been working so hard on learning new words, her mom said, pouring a cup of tea. But have you tried using them in real conversations? Natalie looked down at her cards. Not really, she admitted. I'm afraid I'll mess up. Her mom sat down beside her. Making mistakes is part of learning, sweetheart. You won't improve if you don't practice speaking. Natalie knew her mom was right, but the idea of speaking in English still felt scary. That evening, as she lay in bed, she thought about what her mom had said. Maybe she didn't have to start by talking to strangers. She could practice with someone she felt comfortable with. The next day at school, she found Mia in the library. "Hey, Mia," Natalie said, taking a deep breath. "Can we try something new today? Can we talk in English?" Mia smiled. "Of course. That sounds fun." At first, Natalie felt awkward. She searched for words in her mind, trying to put sentences together. I played a game with my brother," she said slowly. Mia nodded encouragingly. "That's great. What kind of game?" Natalie hesitated for a moment, then found the words. "It was a memory game. We matched words and pictures. It was fun." Mia grinned. "That sounds like a great way to learn. I read a book yesterday. It was about a girl who traveled to different countries." As they continued talking, Natalie realized something. Mia wasn't judging her. She wasn't laughing at her mistakes. She was simply listening, just like a normal conversation. By the end of lunch, Natalie felt more confident. She had used several of her new words, and even though she had made a few mistakes, it didn't matter. She was speaking, and that was what was important. Later that evening, she told her mom about her conversation with Mia. "I was nervous at first, but it got easier," she said. "I think I want to try speaking English more." Her mom smiled. "That's wonderful. Why don't you try speaking English when we go to the grocery store tomorrow?" Natalie's eyes widened. "In public?" Her mom nodded. "You don't have to say much. Just start with something small. Maybe ask the cashier how their day is going." The next day, Natalie stood in the checkout line at the grocery store, her heart pounding. The cashier smiled at her as she scanned the groceries. Natalie took a deep breath. How is your day?" she asked. The cashier's smile widened. "It's going well. Thank you for asking. How about you?" I am good," Natalie said, feeling her face turn red. "That's great to hear," the cashier replied, before handing her the receipt. As Natalie walked out of the store, she felt a wave of excitement. She had done it. It was just a small conversation, but it was a start. From that day on, she made a goal to speak English every day. She talked to her family, her friends, and even tried speaking to new people. She knew she wasn't perfect, but that didn't matter. She was learning, and every conversation made her better. One evening, as she played her word game with Jake, he looked up at her and said, "Natalie, you're really good at English now." Natalie smiled. "Thanks, Jake. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm not afraid to speak anymore." She had started her journey feeling unsure, but now she was confident. She had learned that memorizing words wasn't just about studying. It was about using them, playing with them, and most importantly, speaking them. And with each conversation, she was one step closer to fluency.